Go where your best prayers take you, and clench the fists of your spirit and take it easy. Breathe deeply of the glad air and live one day at a time. Know that you're precious and learn to trust. Amen.
Amen.
Well, good morning on this special day for us to have lots of baptisms, which is always great for us. And also on this weekend of Veterans Day and Veterans Day weekend. Always start this way, and I just ask you to please do it. For those who have served our military, will you please stand? I know there are quite a few of you. Don't be bashful, please stand up. Come on. Thank you. It's not a toss-off for us at St. John's. We take this weekend very seriously. I quote again the reality of the statistic that less than 1% of all Americans, less than 1%, serve our nation in the military. So thank you all for your service. We say it sounds trite. We do not mean it to be trite. And as a friend of mine reminded me this week of Winston Churchill's quote, "So much is owed by so many to so few of you." We say that from our hearts. A reminder, too, that we have a wonderful concert next week. It's going to be a military music concert. It's next Thursday. Those of you who are veterans, the Journey group is hosting it. I think they have about 25 seats left, so some of you may want to participate, particularly directed to those of you who are veterans and your spouses. See, they'll be over in the Great Hall this afternoon after church, so grab a ticket and grab a seat. I want to continue that theme with a great story, and it comes from National Public Radio. NPR does a neat thing. If you listen to it, they do old radio programs. And the radio program I'm alluding to is called Command Performance. These were performances during World War II. They went out to our soldiers and sailors across the world, and they were a weekly variety show. The one I heard and listened to was an episode that was broadcast on April 15th, 1945. Remember the date? Some of you know exactly what the date was because it was the day after the Japanese surrendered and the war was over. So here's how the show began. Bing Crosby, lots of you don't know who that is, that's okay, came on the air and introduced himself. And then he said this, "What can I say at a time like this? Throw your hat in the air? No, that is for an ordinary holiday. This is special. All I can do is thank God that it is over," meaning the war. And with that, immediately, the opera star, Raza Stevens, great mezzo-soprano, began to sing Ave Maria. When she finished, Bing Crosby came on again and said this, "Today our deep down feeling is one of humility." Then the show continued. Singers came on, performers came on, they had a couple of fun comedians on, but the whole tone was set by that beginning. And you catch it, a tone, a mood of humility. When it was all finished, they simply read the words of Ernie Powell. And those of you who don't know who he was the most celebrated of reporters, maybe of all time. He covered the war. In fact, he died covering the war. He was in a battle and was killed. He wrote these words before he died, and they simply ended the program that day by reading his words. Listen to them. "We won this war because our men are brave and because of many other things. Russia and England and China were our allies. Time was on our side and we used it. And the gift of nature's materials were in abundance and we used those as well. We did not win because we are better than other people. I hope in victory we are more grateful than proud." I hope in victory that we are more grateful than proud. I'm going to let you sink with that a bit. I give credit to that whole image to David Brooks. Born a Jew, now fashions himself really as a conservative Christian, writes that way, very conservative man, very deep man of faith, abiding deep faith. And it comes from his new book on character, that if you want to read something important, read his book. But do you get his point? You don't have to agree with it. Do you get his point? I do. Once we were a people of humility and service, and now maybe not so much. Now we have much ego, and he writes extensively about that in our culture today. It is not to put any of you down. It is not to say that the older generation is better than the younger. It is an observation of who we've become. Can you hang with that? Seriously, because there are lots of young people here today, younger than I. It is not to say that older people are superior. That's not his point. His point is to look at our entire society as people who must live together in this society. A man of faith who says something more. We need something more. So there's nothing wrong with pride, is there? You have pride? I do. Incredible pride. I will share something I'm probably not comfortable with sharing, but I'll tell you, when I go to a football game, UT, they play we play the national anthem, sing it, I get teary-eyed every time. Every time. 100%. I bet some of you do as well. I am filled with something deep that I can't even touch. This wellspring of what this nation means to all of us, what this enterprise of freedom means to all of us. It somehow just overwhelms me, and if with that, I think of the people who have done the work to provide it for me. And there are numerous thousands, hundreds of thousands. I have pride in that way, and I bet you do. But even in winning the war, to end all wars, as that generation said, the voices from our past, and I'll remind you, they were the voices of my parents. For some of you, they are your voices. Some of them, your grandparents. Some of your great-grandparents and the babies and children today, their great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents. Those are the voices we're listening to. Their voices, filled with a deep humility and muted always in their pride by their gratitude to God. Their gratitude to God. So I simply ask you to ask yourself, what are the voices that you hear today? And I mean in all walks of society. Sports, politics, and yes, even religion. What are the voices that we hear? Well, this morning we hear another voice. It is an ancient voice as well. It comes from St. Paul, who says something about, it's not just our rights that we're about, it's about doing right. He says in Thessalonians, do not be weary in doing what is right. And what is right for St. Paul? It is doing our work. So to help you unpack that passage a little bit, he's talking about doing what's right, but he's really talking about what our work is. He is talking to the church about the church. He's talking to the church about the church. He's not talking about society. He's talking about us. He says what is right is us doing our work, and he means our Christian work. And believe it or not, for every person here, for every baby, toddler, and child that we will baptize today, that work is the same. It is preaching the gospel. And remember, he's the one who said, yeah, preach, even use words if necessary. You see what he's saying? We know what he was saying. He is saying, live the gospel. That is what our task is. We must live our faith. Live so others can see it. Live so others might share in it. You see, we don't come to church to be superior. The culture thinks that of us. Do not miss it. They think we gather here to show that we are superior to them, those who are not in church. That is not why we come. We're not here to show that we're better than other people. We're not here to prove that we have something that they don't have. We are here to remind ourselves of God and God's purpose in your life, my life, our corporate life. We gather to refuel ourselves. We gather to recharge ourselves for the work that begins when you leave here in the next 6 days. You leave here for 6 days of work, Christian work, in addition to the work you already have as a parent, as a grandparent, your day job, whatever you're doing, you are being refueled to go do that and take your Christianity with you. That's why we come. But don't miss, that work often starts right here. Right here, or wherever you are. We have many guests today, and welcome all of you. Wherever you sojourn, wherever your place of faith is, it starts in that place on Sunday morning as you gather with your community of faith. Do you know the name Chuck Swindoll? Really, I think a really important evangelist, teacher, minister of the Stonebriar Community Church. He was one of the early non-denominational preachers and still one of the leading voices. He's in his 80s now. He was leading church one Sunday morning, and they were like us, all gathered, and all of a sudden he looked kind of down their aisle, and a young man just kind of paraded on up after everybody was seated and they were doing what they were doing. And he watched the young man. He could see long hair, kind of unkempt beard, kind of dirty clothes, had a backpack. And he watched and he got up and he said, thank goodness, because he came to and sat beside and came up to one of the pillars of the church, an old physician in town. And the physician, Chuck didn't know what he said, but the physician said, hey, welcome. Come here and sit with me. Come on, church has started to sit with me. He said, welcome again. I'm glad you're here. And the young man said, thanks. What kind of place is this? And he said, well, it's a church. And he said, what's a church? And the physician said, well, a church is a group of people who come together because they are hurting, needing healing, searching for answers, and trying to find God. And we're glad you're with us this morning. So he sat for a few minutes, then he leans over again. He says, what happens in that box? He meant the pulpit. He said, well, somebody's going to preach in a minute. Why don't you just listen to him, see if he has something to say worth hearing. Went through, the young man stayed through the entire service. After the service, the physician took him for lunch and helped him find a place to stay. Somehow he came back, and again, came back again, and that congregation kind of adopted him, helped him get stable. The days turned into weeks, the weeks turned into months. He got a job through someone. The physician rounded back with him, got him some help working on his alcoholism, his addiction. He got stable, got a job, got sober, got clean, got an apartment. And then a new person kind of was uncovered from all that hair and dirty clothing, because he had 3.5 years of college. He went back and finished college, got a better job, became part of the congregation. And then he said this funny thing one day to the minister then, after Chuck said, you know, I think I'm being called to go to seminary. And he went to Dallas Theological Seminary. So many miles and many years after that morning, he walked in Stonebriar Community Church drunk and off sleeping in the streets. He was ordained. That young man today is an older man with a family and children, stable, has a good life, and he is a minister at a wonderful congregation in Texas. Chuck Swindoll finishes then the image. He says, you know, it has gone full circle. It is full circle. My son and my daughter-in-law and my 2 grandchildren are members of that congregation. He is their pastor now. You see, Chuck Swindoll has given us a wonderful image of what the church is, and as importantly, what it can be. What we really are here for. I would love to think that we at St. John's, and you representing whatever faith community you're in, are those kind of people. That we do welcome those who are hurting and need, but not just people from the street, that we welcome anybody searching, looking for God, struggling to find meaning, trying to get grounded, trying to find a bit of stability in a chaotic world. Because see, even the most normal things can be and are chaotic. You see, wouldn't it be great to think and to know and to trust that our small acts of charity, the very fiber and core of who we are as Christians, actually change lives? That they can sustain someone from one point to the next, that gets them to platform themselves into full sustenance. That sustenance can move from the desperate to something more, maybe incremental at times, but much more substantial. As people find a new life. Isn't that what we're in the business of? We say it all the time. We're in the business of new life. It's great to know that we do practice it as well. That abundance and hope then become fully charged. That's what it's about. That is our work. That is our call. And I'll remind you today, as we bring all these wonderful babies and children, Gracie and Lydia and Scotty and Reed and Caleb and Izzy, as we bring them for baptism, we reenact this very story. We're saying that the very fiber of who we are, we hope to give to them. And parents and godparents, you take on a grave responsibility and a great responsibility. Because you realize we're not talking about their character right now, we're talking about yours. That's what it's about, and our character. We will say in a few minutes that we will support these children in whatever ways we can. We will help shape them to take this Christian business from today into Monday, as you and I are trying to do. Monday after Monday after Monday. But we have to be patient, because it doesn't happen overnight. We're in the business of planting a little idea. I heard a young woman, I'll finish with this, I heard a young woman talking about, and she was a senior in high school, she went on a mission trip from her church, and she said it stayed with her. She said it was a profound experience. She went on to college, went to graduate school, got a job, got another job, moved to the big city, and she said, like lots of friends her age, through all of that, she kind of lost church. She just didn't go to church. And she said most of her friends don't go to church. And she said, but it was interesting, it never failed that mission trip kept coming to her all the time. She thought about it. She'd think about it the oddest times, but it never left her. Well, she's in big city, riding, doing what young people in big cities have to do now, work a million hours, have a telephone that connects you to a business and an office all the time, riding the rails, trying to pay the freight, trying to make friends, trying to get over loneliness. She was doing all of that. And she said she got off the subway, she got off, walked down the street, and she said she watched this guy, and she said she'd never seen him, near Wall Street. She said she watched this guy. He walked up, he had a bag like he had sandwich food or something in it, put it down on a bench, and put a thermos. And then he walked off. She was really well dressed. She said, what is he doing? And then she saw someone who was homeless come up and take it. She just happened to be coming out that afternoon and saw the man again leaving his office late in the afternoon, 6:30. He picked up the thermos that had been left for him on the bench and took it home. She said, So next morning, she laid in wait to see. And sure enough, he did it again, and the thermos appeared, disappeared, reappeared, and went home again. And a little thought hit her. She said, I could do that. So the next day, she brought an orange, and when he set the thermos and the sandwich down, she put an orange down. And then she did an orange the next day, and the next, and the next. Then she started her own little ministry, where she carries fruit in the morning, lunchtime, and just talks to people and hands it out. And by the way, she said, it's funny, it got me back to church. God works in our lives in a full circle. What we do today can stay with these children for their entire lives. And we know what to tell them. When it does, it is life-changing. God bless you all. Amen.